Well, there's good news. The Ducks actually won a game. All right, and there's even better news. John Gibson is finally back, and that's going to give Lukas Dostal a break. The bad news, pretty much everything else is still a mess. We'll talk about that on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, and this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase from Game Time. Let's get right into it. The Ducks actually won for the first time in what seems like forever. And this is their first win in this long homestand. Hallelujah, they got a victory. Can I point out a tweet that I made before the game? Because I looked at who was the opposing goaltender for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Well, first off, Jay Fresh put out a tweet that pointed out the best and worst goalies this season by goals saved above expected. And Lukas Dostal is third on that list with a plus 9.4. That's very good. There's also the lowest goals saved above expected. And Daniil Tarasov is towards the bottom of that list. In fact, he's in the bottom 10 of worst goaltenders in the entire National Hockey League. So I knew the Ducks were going to play Columbus without Elvis Merzlikins because he started on Saturday against the Los Angeles Kings. Okay, that's fine. I even said if the Ducks don't win, I STG. Well, guess what? The Ducks did win. Do I feel great about that? I guess I feel okay about that. I mean, I don't know what big takeaway I could have except that everything else is a mess. And I'm going to focus solely on defense. I'm specifically going to focus on not getting the puck out of the zone and having extended periods in their own defensive zone. This happened more than a couple of times on Sunday's game. I mean, I did want to go back and watch because, hey, the Ducks actually won. But actually watching the game, there's not much change between the Ducks this game and the last 7-8 games. There's not much difference. A lot of the same problems are still there. The Ducks are still not clearing the puck. The Ducks are still not finishing their checks. They're still not hitting hard enough in order to grab those loose pucks. I'm going to point out a shift in the middle of the second period, literally the middle of the second period with about 10 minutes left. And this went on until it was about 7 minutes left. And this was a long shift that was kind of broken up. So you had these five guys out on the ice for about 3.5 minutes. Jackson Lacombe and Radko Gudas on defense. Then you have Troy Terry, Frank Vetrano, and Trevor Zegras as your forwards on defense. So to be fair, the Ducks did get one decent shot opportunity with about 30 seconds into that shift. And Zegras did do a decent job actually creating a decent shot opportunity. And I don't blame him actually trying to push forward at that point because Tarasov at this point in the game had already given up 2 goals. And it looked like they were going to get a third goal right there. Little did we know that those 5 guys were going to stay out there for pretty much almost the rest of the period. There was an icing in between that. But before that, Radko Gudas failed to clear the puck. And he also was, it seemed like he just wasn't hitting with full force. Like he was trying to hit his guy or he was trying to like loosen the puck, but the check didn't have that same ferocity that we are used to seeing or we're accustomed to seeing from Radko Gudas. As far as Jackson Lacombe, there were a couple of moments in this game where I think he was trying to overplay the puck going around the horn, or, I mean, he was just going after those loose pucks, those loose 50-50s, and losing every time. And you cannot do that. You cannot lose those puck battles in the corners, and you cannot lose those 50-50s. You just cannot do it. Yeah, Jackson Lacombe was caught pinching during this elongated 3.5 minute stretch where all 5 players are out there. And then you have Terry Vetrano and Zegras. Zegras was hardly checking at all during the shift. He looked gassed. Frank Vetrano, to his credit, was at least trying to block shots. In fact, he had multiple blocked shots in the second period. I mean, it looked like he could have gotten welts after that. That's how much he was really going for it at that point. So at least I'll give some credit where credit is due, and that is Frank Vetrano. In this game, by the way, Vetrano was credited with only 3 blocked shots. It felt like more. It felt like he had about 5 or 6 blocked shots, but he was officially credited with 3 blocked shots. Okay, fine, whatever. All 3 of those happened in the second period. There was at least another one that I think could have been given credit but wasn't. Troy Terry, he was there, and yeah, he was there. He was at least trying a little bit on defense at times. He was trying to use an active stick and just fanned a couple of times. So I'll give Troy Terry some credit, but I did call out the players that I did call out. So just to keep going on that same shift, by the way, same shift. The Ducks iced the puck about 1 minute and 30-minute 40 into that shift. So now it's a face-off in the Ducks' own defensive zone. They do win the face-off and then quickly lose the puck. This was Radko Gudas trying to gather the puck right after the face-off win and just kind of muffed it. Now, there were a couple of times where the Ducks did get it out of the zone, but it only went as far as the red line on center ice, so the Ducks really could not make any changes. So 1 minute turns to 2 minutes. 2 minutes turns to 3 minutes. Lacombe, Gudas, Terry, Vetrano, Zegras were out there for nearly 3.5 minutes. And Columbus, I mean, they could have scored easily on this play. Adam Fantilli was out there for a bit. Actually, it was because of Adam Fantilli that there was even more time in the Ducks defensive zone after that. Because right at the end of that, there was a really bad penalty. This should not have been done. Trevor Zegras cross-checked Adam Fantilli right in the back. That penalty did not need to happen. So the Ducks go on the penalty kill and even more time on their heels. At that point, shots were 17-13 in favor of Columbus. By the end of the period, it was 24-16 in favor of Columbus. So they were just peppering the heck out of John Gibson, who I think is ready to get the taser again. They've got to get the pucks out of the zone. They've got to make clearances. You cannot just try to clear to the center. You cannot try to clear just to get out of the blue line. No, you should clear the puck. Get it farther beyond the blue line. Get it farther beyond center ice, for crying out loud. Poor John Gibson is trying his best. Was it much better in the third period? No, it wasn't. But I'm pointing out that shift because those 5 guys were out there for almost 3.5 minutes. That was by far the worst of it. But this kept going the entire rest of the game. Third period, there were many cases where I thought the Ducks could have cleared the puck and did not do it, which partially might explain why Columbus pulled their goalie so much earlier than I thought they were. So defense gotta be fixed, folks. All right, we're going to step aside for a moment. We're going to head into the first intermission and talk about the game in detail. We'll get to that on the other side. Now a brief word from PrizePicks. And look, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. All you got to do is pick more or less than, or at least 2 players, at least 4 players, and you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks. You could run your game all season long. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so your lineups stay in play. And PrizePicks also offers promotions like Taco Tuesday. Taco! I am hungry right now. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So let's say you're looking at Troy Terry. Could he get more or less than half a goal? Well, you could try all of this out on PrizePicks. Just download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. We're also brought to you by the Game Time app, which makes buying tickets even easier for sporting events, obviously, but they also have concerts, which you could definitely check out with Game Time picks. They take out all the fluff and they only show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time sifting through thousands of tickets. I've used Game Time several times before, especially on baseball tickets, and it has been more than worth it. And right now, Game Time is having an exclusive zone deal for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. Go to the Game Time app to purchase tickets and get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. That's amazing, folks. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The Ducks just played Sunday night against the Columbus Blue Jackets and were successful in getting their first victory of the homestand. They previously lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, the Vancouver Canucks, the Minnesota Wild. The Columbus Blue Jackets, they're probably the worst. No, I shouldn't say probably there. They are the worst out of all those teams so far. So if that's the only win they're going to get at home, this was one that they had to get because Columbus is towards the bottom of the standings in the Eastern Conference, right there with the Habs. The Blackhawks, they're right there as well. But Columbus, man, they are really going through it, especially with their backup goaltender, who was not Elvis Merzlikins. That was Daniil Tarasov, who started off right away pretty shaky, but I will give credit. That was a fantastic pass by Cutter Gauthier to find an open Brett Leeson to make it 1-0 Ducks. And this was early in the game too. I do like those little drop passes. I like the little behind the back passes where he just kind of risks it back behind him. Cutter Gauthier is starting to get very good at that. He still does not have a goal this season. He's still snake bitten, but he's getting there. And by the way, Brett Leeson with his first. Brett Leeson is a player that I think very high of that should get more playing time. Of course, right now, he's going to get more playing time as well as a couple other Ducks because of injuries going on. I didn't point this out, but there was 2 injuries that we kind of had to keep an eye on. And in fact, there was a couple players that were out for this game. Cam Fowler, he was out with an upper body injury. He was in warmups, but didn't play. So that's what happened there. Now, also, Mason McTavish, he's day-to-day with an upper body injury. I know some Ducks fans are going to hate me saying this. Some are going to love what I'm going to say. Cam Fowler being out of the lineup, that's fine. Cam Fowler has been pretty off so far this season. As far as Mason McTavish, he has been so up and down this season that it's good to give some of the other guys a chance. I never like seeing anybody injured, and it's never good for team chemistry or building that chemistry in general. But at least you got a couple of guys that are hungry for playing time and willing to put everything on the line. So I was fine with the lineup changes. Now on to the Columbus goal. This first one for Columbus was a power play goal. The Ducks still not doing much on the penalty kill. Igor Chinnikov scored his 4th of the season. So all of a sudden, 1-1 tie game. But in the second period, early in the second, Jackson Lacombe got his first goal of the season. This was a nifty goal, by the way. Nice little shot from in close for Jackson Lacombe. When he got the puck and passed to Troy Terry, there was a point shot from Radko Gudas, and this thing was slapped. And there was Jackson Lacombe to pick up the loose change, and he was fairly all alone at that point. Fairly all alone. So that made it 2-1 Anaheim going into the third period. And going into the third, Leo Carlsson already with his fifth goal of the season. This was a roofer. This was a mama hide the cookies, put him top shelf, and Leo Carlsson picked the top shelf and scored a very nice goal. And then you have Isaac Lundstrom on the empty net. Before that, you had Kirill Marchenko score for Columbus, making it 3-2. But Isaac Lundstrom pulled through with the empty netter. Ducks haven't had many empty net opportunities this season. So good to see the Ducks kind of get on the board with that one. And that's your final score. 4-2 in favor of the Anaheim Ducks. As I mentioned, their first home win in 4 tries. However, San Jose won over the weekend, and they got a point Monday night, which means that the Ducks are in last place. I did not see that coming. I didn't expect the Ducks to be last right now. That I did not want to see coming. That I was kind of in denial about. But, here we are. The Ducks with one of the worst records in the league in a season that we were all very hopeful. But a win is a win is a win, so we will take it and run with it. We're going to head to the second intermission right now and talk a little bit more about this one and what the Ducks need to do. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. For example, the Kansas City Chiefs, could they keep this undefeated roll going? So to check it out, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Once again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You're locked in with Jason Hernandez on episode number 955 of Locked On Anaheim Ducks. So thanks to those of you that have been everydayers. Thanks to those of you that have listened for the last few years of Ducks futility. But we're gonna have, a little group therapy and really just dive into it at some point soon. But for now, I do want to talk on this segment about the return of John Gibson, who finally returned after having an emergency appendectomy a couple of months ago. He was expected to return a couple of weeks ago. He was still on the higher end of that window of returning. It was almost 2 months ago now that he had an emergency appendectomy. And from what I've gathered, yeah, he's come back slowly, but that was partially because Lukáš Dostal had been doing so well up until the last couple of games where Lukáš Dostal kind of finally got a little bit of dent in his armor. So it felt like the right time to bring back John Gibson, especially after that previous game on Friday. It did feel like, okay, Dostal's probably getting a little bit tired. He's been playing an awful lot of games lately, especially the last 2 games against the Canucks and the Minnesota Wild. Dostal didn't have his best performance. So I was kind of saying in my head, okay, Gibby's got to come back soon, right? Well, he had a good performance on Sunday, partially because the Ducks had him have a good performance again. Stop me if you've heard this before. Those of you everydayers for the last 2, 3, 4 years, you've heard me say this phrase a lot. Somebody give John Gibson the taser. Well, write it again. Give him the taser because he had to stop a ton of shots. He had to try to stop 40 shots. He wound up stopping almost all of them. He had 38 saves. He was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, especially during that second period that I mentioned before where the Ducks never got the puck out of the offensive zone, or sorry, Columbus's offensive zone. And there was chance after chance after chance after chance, a lot of them of the high danger variety again. And Gibby had to save their butts again. For all intents and purposes, I mean, this was a 3-2 game. It should not have been a 1-goal game, but it was. Gibby looked good. Movement was good. Glove was very good on this game, I thought. And the rebound control was pretty solid for the most part. I mean, there was a couple of moments where I thought, okay, maybe that rebound couldn't have gone that way. But for the most part, he kind of looked like the Gibby of old. The 2 goals that were allowed, one of them was a power play goal. That one was just defense breaking down on the PK. The other goal that he gave up, I'm not going to put that on him either. I'm not. That was just a really solid goal by Marchenko. And also a point in the game where I thought, okay, here we go. The Ducks are doing their own thing. And then, oops, a turnover happens. A turnover happens where the puck goes right to the player in the slot. So that I do not put on John Gibson either. I put that on the defense. So if you take away those 2 goals that were not his fault, he was brilliant. Hockey Stat Cards had him as a 163 game score because the Ducks were expected to give up 3.63 goals. The Ducks' expected goals allowed should be a lot, and it has been a lot. But Gibby's looked good. So now the big question, where do you go from here as far as the goaltending? Do you stick with John Gibson for now? Do you continue to ride Lukáš Dostal, who has also been brilliant this season? I think you got to go 50-50. I think you got to go tandem goalie at this point. You cannot just put John Gibson out there over and over again based on one game, and you especially cannot put him out there based on one game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, where they didn't have their best roster out there either. I mean, I look at the roster for Columbus, and there's a lot left to be desired for that Blue Jackets team. So I don't even count this as a barometer for the success for the rest of the season if the Ducks can have success. And this is especially true on the goaltending side. Gibby had a good game against a weak offense, against a very weak team. What is Gibby going to do against either, because I don't think he'll play both, either Vegas or Detroit? I think the best step moving forward is to go tandem. Have Lukáš Dostal start against Vegas and then switch it up against Detroit 2 nights later. Or vice versa. I'm actually okay with Gibby starting. No. I take it back. I'm okay with having Dostal start against Vegas. Dostal has a little bit better stats against the Vegas Golden Knights. Gibby has had issues with Vegas throughout his whole career. So that would be the best at moving forward. Dostal, Vegas, Gibby against Detroit coming up this week. And then you have that back-to-back on the road. You're, of course, going to go back-to-back and have different goalies on both those games. One against Dallas, one against Chicago. And it should be like that for most, at least the rest of the calendar year. Try to do that. And there are a number of back-to-backs in December. There's multiple back-to-backs in December. So you are going to see that a lot, where you're going to have one goalie, then the other goalie the following night. So I think that pattern is going to hold for the rest of the calendar year. And then once you get to that New Year's Eve game, then kind of look at the barometer and see where each goalie is at. Where is John Gibson at by December 31st? Where is Lukas Dostal at by December 31st? And I think it's very important for Greg Cronin and his coaching staff to look at how they are good giving up goals that are 7-hole or giving up goals, up high. So you kind of have to really dive into what both goaltenders are doing. Dostal has had a decent amount sample size by this point. John Gibson is just one game. You got to see where he's at after at least 7, 8, 9 games, and then go from there. Who's going to emerge as the number one goaltender? And that's a question that I think it will be answered by New Year's Eve. Who do you guys think is going to emerge as the number one goaltender for the rest of the season? Is it finally Lukas Dostal's time to emerge as the number one goalie? And that leads into another question that I think I'm going to save for another show because we're kind of up on time. But this is something that is on the back of my mind, and I think I'm going to have a guest kind of delve in on this as well. If Dostal emerges as the better goalie in the next month and a half, the big question, what do you do with John Gibson? And who backs up Lukas Dostal if it gets to that point? Important questions that I think are going to be answered maybe this year, maybe next year, who knows? All right, that's going to do it for this podcast. Kind of leaving it on a cliffhanger there. Next episode, we're going to dive a little bit more on the goaltending for the Ducks, and then we will talk later on in the week about the Ducks game versus the Vegas Golden Knights. As usual, we will have our goals Thursday, who are looking better, and then we will wrap up the week by talking about the Ducks and hopefully a win against the Detroit Red Wings. So stay tuned for all of that coming up later this week. In the meantime, thank you all so much for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. We are ad-free on Amazon. We're also on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button if you have not already. You could follow me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_Ducks. And you could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. It has been a while since I've done a mailbag episode, so I don't know when I'm going to open up the mailbag again yet, but I plan on doing it at some point later this month. So go ahead and get any questions in this week and moving forward into next week. Just drop in those questions and let me know. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is very much greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason Hernandez saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there. Please, please be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.